If you want a different experience for the family when you visit Houston, Texas, head down to the port and tour the Battleship Texas. She was launched in May of 1912, and for 32 years, her job remained the same, to float the big guns of her main battery into action.
Well, Steve, while we were away, the big guns were booming here in the Astrodome as well. It was Dave Banner bringing out the old machine, Banner Brown, and trying to improve on his distance. Remember, he had a little problem with his new machine, the Banner machine. He did better, but not good enough to move into first place. Tim Engler still holds that. However, Dave holds second and fourth with his two tractors, Gardner Stone in third. And now let's go to the man who leads it.
Well, Tim, we saw you win last season at Fort Recovery, and you were pessimistic about your chances after your pull. How do you feel today?
Well, as each tractor runs down the track, Steve, it looks like we're in a pretty good position. I think pulling early on the track was a good spot for us today because the track's a little too wet, and it's getting worse as each tractor goes along.
And they look like they're tough to drive on a track this sticky.
It really is. You have to run real light on the front to get going out of the hole, to get any kind of speed, to get any distance down the track. So it is quite touchy off the line.
Good job. Thank you.
Well, Tim, here is your next challenger for the lead in the Redman TNT Supernationals in the 9,200-pound class. This is Dick Refshog in a tractor called Behav'N. Behav'N carrying 4 Keith Black Hemis on board. And, of course, Dick is going to have to run at least 182.12 feet to move into the lead. As we see Dick get lined up on the sled, there are those monster motors that hopefully will propel him down this 210-foot track here in the Astrodome. Now, Dick is backing up toward the nemesis of all pullers. That is a sled, in this particular case, one called Old Ironsides. Now, how that sled behaves and how it's weighted and how Dick pulls against it is the secret.
The thing that makes truck and tractor pulling really work is a machine called a weight transfer device, a.k.a. the sled. This one, dubbed Old Ironsides, has been voted Sled of the Year for the last 4 seasons. Now, I'm in the operator's seat, and he's necessary because if there's any problem with the hitch, by hitting a whole bunch of air brakes and things here, he can stop the sled right in its tracks and also stop the weight transfer box from going forward. He also backs the sled to the starting line because it's self-propelled with a little V8 engine up front. Now, I mentioned that weight transfer box, and that's very important. Unloaded, the sled tips the scales at about 30,000 pounds. But stack all of those iron ingots in that box, it can weigh as much as 60,000 pounds. And via those chains, it travels at a variable rate up the rails. Depending on the class, it'll move faster and carry more weight and can stop virtually the most powerful tractor dead in his tracks.
Well, let's see how Dick does against Old Ironsides. There goes the green flag, the TNT official holding that green flag. Dick drops the hammer, feeds the power to those 4 Keith Black. Looks like a pretty good run right now, but now he's beginning to, all of a sudden an instant stop. Old Ironsides just dragged him down.
You know, Brock, it might have been geared wrong because it never seemed to get the momentum. The balance looked about right. It just didn't seem to have the torque to handle the track. As I said before, the track is a bit soft. 118 feet for him, not good enough, and more mud racing. This is the final mud racer in the modified class. Ray Henson's McNasty. He needs to be 2.22 seconds.
Okay, here he goes against the clock. It's running. Mechanical problems there, or a falter anyway. This is going to be a disastrous pass for Ray Henson. Oh, yeah, over 4 seconds. That is clearly nowhere near good enough to take home the bread here.
But you can see how clean the machine was before it went in the pit. He was out of control, Brock. I don't think he was straight. He wasn't lined up quite right. These are 4-wheel drives. The right rear corner tire got a grip, slung him sideways. He had to lift, and then it bogged down, and that was it. Hope Ray Henson is watching this replay of the winning effort by Johnny Preston. Preston should open a mud racers school because you can't do it any nicer than this. He kept the mini truck straight, and that made all the difference. No deviations in course, just plowed the mud and water out of his way, and the final result, see Preston taking home the lion's share of the purse at 2.22 seconds, followed by McCaslin at 2.24. Ray Henson not in the top 5.
Well, Ray looked like he had a pretty good pass started, and then he kind of had to let off about halfway down.
Yeah, when I let off, I lost the gas pedal.
Oh, is that what happened?
Couldn't go while I find it.
It's a little sloppy in there, huh?
Yeah, it does. It really does.
That's the only problem. Otherwise, you were running good, I think.
Yeah, we just got the motor back together About 1:30 this afternoon, and this first pass it's had on it, it's running good.
Oh, good. At least you stay together.
With driver error.
Okay. It always happens. Okay, good job, anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Good job and good attitude. It's monster truck time as they roll in the tunnel at the far end of the stadium. It'll be Casper in the far lane versus in the near lane Bigfoot. And in the famous Bigfoot Ford truck, we have an onboard camera. Earlier, I looked at how this machine works. What started out in 1974 as a promotional gimmick for his off-road shop in St. Louis has turned into a growth industry for Bigfoot creator Bob Chandler. Big feet would be more accurate. There's 8 of these trucks around the nation to satisfy the demand. And this is a brand new one. Let's take a look. Now, the tires are absolutely huge, and they are off of an agricultural fertilizer spreader. They cost over $2,000 a piece and only last about 8 months in competition. Now, the engine is a Ford 460 iron V8 that's stroked out to a little over 500 cubic inches, has a supercharger, and produces about 800 horsepower. Now, the frame on the latest Bigfoot is out of a 2-ton truck, modified, of course, and up front, the differential is out of a 5-ton military truck. Now, there's a similar differential at the rear, but that 4x4x4 means that the rear wheels also steer, 4-wheel steering, and they're steered electrically, a little toggle switch in the cockpit to handle that. Now, all of this weighs in at about 14,000 pounds, and it takes 18 shock absorbers to handle it.
Well, this is the man that drives it, Jim Kramer, the very best, really, in this business. Jim has been around for quite a while, run with Bob Chandler over the years. Dale Harris is going to challenge him right now in Casper, one of the younger drivers in this burgeoning class of competition. Monster trucks, round 2 here in the Astrodome. Remember now, there are 10 wreck cars lying ahead and then 3 big mounts. They're off. That's Kramer. Good start. Right in front of you. Here he goes. Right over his shoulder. That's Jim Kramer working the wheel, Steve.
Not only is he working the wheel, Brock, remember he's also electrically with another switch steering the rear wheel, which accounts for the reason he can turn like that. Uh-oh. The truck from Pearl, Mississippi, Casper, has had some engine problems. Steam and smoke pouring out of it. Hardly anybody can match Jim Kramer that first few hundred feet, and the Casper truck did it. They had a good one going. And just listen to the crowd, Brock. They adore that Bigfoot truck. Over the final jump, across the finish line, and headed out of the stadium to race again in the semifinals. As for Casper, well, I'm afraid it's going to need an engine overhaul.
Back at the world-famous Houston Astrodome for more Redman TNT Supernationals action. I'm Brock Yates along with Steve Evans. And right now, it's 9,200-pound pulling action as we watch the tractor of Don Fenley get fired up. They call it the Texas Bunny Farmer. And like everybody else, he is going to try to outpull the leader, Tim Engler, who has dominated the competition so far with a 182-foot pull. So, as Don Fenley gets fired up, let's go talk to the man who's dominating the monster trucks, Jim Kramer.